is actually the Bible that helped me understand what it means to be a Christian. It wasn't a pastor, it wasn't a teacher, it wasn't a church, it wasn't a mission trip. It was the Bible, and it probably could have, in the video game where you hit the speed burst and jump up a few levels, I probably could have jumped up a few levels if I would have just sat down and read specifically the New Testament, of course, the whole Bible, and Romans, Galatians, those books would have really helped me. I had finished Bible college in 2013. This was the time where my biological dad, he was quite young, I think he was 55. He had a bunch of different cancers, and he ended up passing away, and my brother and I were twins. We spent some time alongside his bedside, and I remember calling him the day before he passed away. I have shared this before in a testimony where a friend and I had just basically called him, and we felt to share that he was forgiven, that he could release whatever he needed to do. God forgave him. He doesn't have to beat himself up. He didn't live the most holy life, and he even told me that he wasn't a big fan of church, but he loved Jesus. And the next day he passed away, so perhaps that was just a releasing of the burden. Maybe he was scared of death. I'm not exactly sure. So we ended up going to speak at his funeral. He's on the other side of Canada. I shared a testimony about how my dad started to come to know the Lord, that he started praying a little bit before he died, and it was a sad time where my dad passed away, but at the same time I got to share about the last few years of my dad's life where he came to know God, and a lot of his friends were not necessarily Christians. So I was very thankful in the midst of this tragedy. And I was on the airplane, and as I was sitting there just praising God, thanking him for the opportunity to share, I had a word in my heart, and I heard the word SBS. And I remember thinking, well, what does that mean? But I laid it down on the airplane. I didn't think about it. And then I went to church, I believe it was a few weeks later, and a lady at church, she had handed me some CDs, and she had said that these CDs are for you. And I popped them in at home, and it was by a guy named Gary Wedstone, and it was called the School of Biblical Studies, SBS. So then I popped in the CDs. I was listening to this School of Biblical Studies, which is about learning that we are the righteousness of Christ. And that was really renewing my mind, but still not really, I wasn't in the Bible. And then I went to the school where I basically had this huge quiet time with God for about 10 months. And I was just color-coding my Bible front to back, reading it from the original reader's point of view. And I had trouble with the school. I was almost kicked out of it at the very beginning because I was imposing my cultural Christianity, all the things I had learned about the prophetic and the church and the spiritual warfare, and I was placing it on the scriptures, and they were saying you're not really reading it from the original reader's point of view. So then I had to change my mind, and when I decided to just read it from the original reader's point of view, and then I would make my interpretations, or I make my observations and applications from that place of what it was really written for, I started getting a foundation. I started renewing my mind. I started seeing the gospel more. I started seeing the Christian life. I started seeing that, we have the flesh, and we also have the spirit, and the flesh is at war with the spirit, and that's part of the struggle of what we're going through.